All right, we're back again with another episode of 80/20. And today we have the lovely someone that I am very, very excited to dive in deeper that I don't really know that well. So we'll see where this conversation goes. But Stephanie Ray, I found her on Instagram. She is an embodiment and somatic coach, and we're going to dive into a little bit of what that means in English. First of all, though, I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for making time for this. I have a ton of gratitude for you being willing to share of yourself and of your journey and of, what you do with the people here at 80/20. Thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited for today. I'm excited to see where this conversation goes and the depths that we can explore together.
Yeah. Let's just start with what an embodiment and somatic coach means. Because I mean, on first glance, no idea what that means.
Yeah, basically nobody does. So these are kind of buzzwords in the coaching industry, but the general public is still coming to what these mean. So somatic, if you break down the word, soma actually means body. So somatic is anything that's happening in your body. So my title is a somatic experiencing practitioner. So I help people experience their bodies in a way that leads to trauma resolution and trauma healing. So it's that bottom up approach that's becoming a lot more popular, that works really well with normal cognitive therapy that most people know, but it's helping to really work with nervous system regulation, work with emotional regulation, and help people to release trauma that is stored in their body. And in that, my niche is sexual trauma and relational trauma. So that's somatic. And then the embodiment part is really, if you break down that word, embodiment. So once again, helping people to get into their body and to be able to become present with what is real and what is happening in their body. So the tools that I would use mostly for that are breath work, mindfulness, and meditation, which most people have kind of heard of these different things, movement practices. And I also have been studying Tantra for about 2 decades now. So I bring in different tantric practices to help people work with different energies. And yeah, so that would be a high level of what I do. And if you look at my Instagram page, I obviously specialize in sexuality.
Yeah. No, I think it's pretty clear by your Instagram and the kind of content that you're putting out who you best serve or who you most showcase that you serve. But let's step back. I mean, how the heck did you get here? Like, were you a different kind of coach here before? Is there some anecdotal experience that led you to this? Like, from just on the high level all the way down to how'd you get into more of the sex therapy? Like, how did you get here?
I love this question because I actually used to be a Mormon housewife.
Wait, hold on. One more time. Mormon housewife? What does that mean?
Oh yeah. So I was I worked in finance for a while. So we'll even back up further than that. So I used to be in investment
Wow.
banking. Yeah. In my 20s, I was investment banking downtown Chicago and realized that that just was not the path for me. So I quit that. I ran off to an ashram, started studying meditation and breath work back in 2007, and obviously yoga as well. And so that was kind of my gateway into wow, when people get into their bodies with yoga, with presence, with energies, um, just with movement, with mindfulness, there's a lot of healing that can happen and a lot of emotional release. And just, it was really beautiful. So that's kind of the transition that I made. And I was just sort of casually teaching yoga. I was married at the time. Like I said, I was Mormon, which is definitely like purity culture, anti like talking about sex, very much not women's empowerment around sexuality as well. If anything, it's very repressive, especially from a very young age. So it was always something that was intriguing to me, but it was off limits to talk about. So it wasn't until I ended up getting divorced and I left the Mormon religion in the span of about 6 months, which, as you can imagine, like blows up your whole world. And you're like, who am I? What am I going to do with my life? I don't know. This is a complete starting over. And that's when I just got deeper and deeper into this world. And I started going on to different retreats. I went to different tantric retreats. I went to different somatic healing retreats and started working with a lot of my own trauma. and experiencing that release through these different somatic practices. And at the same time, I was doing cognitive therapy. So I really was getting that like working with the mind, working with the brain to rewire, speaking things out loud to release the shame. But it wasn't until I personally started experiencing like, wow, how much is stored in my body, and like having really top-notch facilitators facilitate these practices of trauma healing for me, that like after the first one I sat them down and I was like, where did you train, how did you do it, I need to do this because this is literally like magic, I don't understand. And so they directed me into the somatic experiencing world. It's a 3-year trauma therapy program, trauma practitioner program. I went through different breathwork practices, biodynamic breathwork for trauma release. I dove in even deeper into different tantric practices. And from there, like sexuality had just kind of always come up for me. And as a woman, most women have experienced some sort of sexual trauma in their life or sexual shame. And so working through that myself, I just found that I started gravitating towards wanting to work with women to help them to release these bonds of sexual shame that they have experienced since they were little girls, basically from family, religion, culture, society, magazines, porn industry, all these different things, but then also start to heal and release actual sexual abuse, sexual, physical, sexual trauma as well. So I started working with that. But what I found is that actually empowering your sexuality is a huge missing piece of the conversation when it comes to healing your sexual trauma. So I started blending the science and spiritual world that I was in, the world of Tantra, the world of breath work, the world of energy work, with actual neuroscience of how to heal. And it just started to all connect to me. And it was kind of like one thing after the other led to deeper work, to deeper work, to deeper work to get me where I am today. So it's a pretty funny story, from investment banker to this like Mormon housewife to now I'm like a world-renowned tantric sex coach, bringing women around the world, doing practices and teaching on Zoom. And it's a complete flip. My life does not look anything like it did 15 years ago. We'll just say that.
That is wild. But it sounds like you're in alignment kind of with what you want to be doing, what you feel your calling is, what you feel your purpose is, from your experience and the things that you were like, oh, wow, this helped me. But hold on, I needed this piece and then I needed this piece. You kind of put the puzzle together and now you're trying to give that box of pieces to give someone else the capability to put their pieces together. I mean, is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Absolutely.
Like it's not necessarily like this tool or this tool or this tool, but hey, my good people, this is what has helped me. These are the things that I did that worked well. These are my experiences with this. This might not be the exact hammer for that nail. However, combining all these things opened my mind to these areas that then helped me move past it and through it. Not even really past it, because you're not going around it, right? Going through it. Is that kind of what's happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really love this analogy of a puzzle, because I think that that's exactly how I looked at it. It's like I was putting all of these pieces of my puzzle back together. And so now it's like I have this really clear vision and picture of all the different ways that really work to help empower sexuality, to empower sensuality, which is very different, to help couples develop intimacy, to help people to learn how to regulate their emotional state and their nervous system. And so now it's like I take this puzzle and I kind of expand out the pieces so that people have like, it's not going to take them as long. I want to shrink down the time that it's going to take. It's like I've done this for over a decade and I went right through it. And I'm like, well, this works, this works, this works. And specifically, these are the tools that really work for a woman's body. So it does. And not everything is for everybody, but there's enough tools out there that there's something in there for everybody. There really is. And at the essence, it's just coming back into your body. And that's the magic, is like learning to feel inside your body. And there's 100 different ways that you can do that you can access that. But that's in essence, which all of these puzzle pieces and all of these tools lead is back into your body.
Okay. Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. And yeah, I don't know if the puzzle is a little bit of a crude analogy, but hey, whatever. Let's go back to where you were at when you were in the Mormon faith, right? Yes or no, that was similar to Handmaid's Tale.
Oh my God, yes.
Yes, like legitimately?
I mean, obviously there's some parts that there's, some gruesome and some gory and some torturous and horrible scenes in Handmaid. I love Handmaid's Tale. It's literally my favorite show ever. But
Oh wow.
sometimes I watch that and I get very triggered and I'm like, I feel like I lived a lot of this and I feel like I can see how we're only two steps away from this. But I did feel very trapped. I felt like you're only told this one narrative. And if you start to move out of that narrative or you question that narrative, that's not okay and that's not right. And you're either brought back in immediately or it's like, we're going to pray for you.
And you're kind of cast out. Like if you
And
don't
you're,
if you don't
yeah,
repent and come back in, like it's then, hey, you're now an outsider and good luck.
yeah. So like when I left the Mormon faith, I did feel very outcasted. I lost a lot of friends. I lost family members. My immediate family was so loving and so supportive, but I did have a lot of that where people were like, "What the fuck? We can't talk to you anymore because you're going to corrupt me." And with your tank
Mm.
tops and your coffee.
Your coffee and your tank tops. Well, don't get us started. Go too close to the nipple, and here we go. Good night. Like these are the same
Yeah.
people that are on Pornhub, right? Like, but oh, you don't tempt my son, don't tempt my husband in person. But
Yeah,
I'm gonna sit on Pornhub for 3 hours. We can't be
absolutely.
serious, right? So how
Absolutely.
long did it take for you to get out of? So you were in there. Obviously, was it a light bulb moment? Was it a, hey, I have to get out right now, or was it kind of a slow burn on like a, I'm looking to the left and right, and I don't really love what's happening. Like I got to figure out a way out of this.
Yeah, I kind of had pretty much a light bulb moment and I feel like I walked out the back door and never went back.
Okay.
And that was it. It was just over.
Yeah. Do you mind
And
sharing how you got there?
there was a lot going on in my life at that time, right? So like I said, I was starting to go through a divorce. There was a lot of questioning that had I was going through. Um there was a lot of, if I'm getting to be totally honest, there was just a lot of trauma that I was seeing happening in a lot of people's lives. And I didn't understand how this great, magnificent God could allow all of this to happen. But yet I was damned to hell if I had a coffee or if I wore short shorts, or if I had sex outside of a relationship or premarital sex. Like I didn't understand this duality. It didn't make sense that all of these horrible things could be happening. And so when I really started to see all of this and I started questioning, I was like, this makes no fucking sense. And I'm done believing this because this just, in my mind, it was just stupid. Like there's no other word to describe it. I just didn't feel like that was very resonant. And never mind like their stance on the LGBTQ community. And I just felt like it was very not in alignment with me as a woman and going forward in my life as well. So, yeah, I just kind of walked out the back door and threw on a tank top and grabbed a pina colada in Vegas with my best friend, and it was all she wrote.
Goodness. I've literally never heard the coffee thing ever in my life. I mean, I understand.
Oh,
I grew up Southern Baptist, so I get the, hey, ladies, if you're wearing string, spaghetti strap tops, you're going to tempt men into putting their hands on you. Hey, and it's not to say that I agree with it in the slightest. In fact, I sit on the other side of the table on that. But I remember those narratives like, hey, make sure that your skirts are longer than the longest finger. Hey, dudes, you can take your shirts off whenever, and you can have a bulge in between your legs, and you can wear no underwear around, and no one's going to say a daggum thing to you. But if a woman, God forbid, at 12 or 13 going through puberty, she has breast, God forbid that she has a spaghetti strap on, like that's going to tempt a man to do something and violate your autonomy, and it's your fault.
Yeah.
What? Like that's not
Yeah.
something that is that is necessarily just one religion, right? The purity, I don't even know what you would call it, but like this purity box that we put people in. Um, so I have context there, but coffee?
Yeah.
What?
So, two things. First of all, there is this whole purity culture is kind of what it is, and this purity craze. So that is, a lot of people are really sucked into that or have that just spoon fed from such a young age. And I would love to dive deeper into that. But yes, coffee, like Diet Coke was fine, but coffee was going to send me to hell. Monster drinks were okay, but green tea was like of the devil. So the dualities, like I said, once I kind of started taking a step back, I was like, none of this makes sense to me. And this isn't actually a God that I can be in alignment with. So yeah,
And
so coffee, yes.
and I mean the logical inconsistencies is what gets me the most about religion, about the sweeping generalization. But do you think, and this is maybe going a little bit deeper here, but do you think that that is actually the God that these religions are supposed to be talking about? Or do you think that as humans we've bastardized it?
I do. I think a lot of it is humanized. Um, I think that look, I have nothing against religion and organized religion. I think that there's a lot of good that comes from it. And I also think that there is a lot that can be fixed, right? And I have no animosity towards the Mormon religion. Like I've really worked through like all of my own personal shit. So, and I know a lot of beautiful people that are in all different types of religion. But I do think that if you span out, most religions are saying the same thing in just a different way. And I think that they all lead up in their most purest essence to love, right? To this universal, call it God, call it goddess, call it whatever you want, to this universal love. It's just that when humans get involved, that's when you get egos involved. That's when you get power involved. That's when you get money involved. And things get a little skewed and wonky from there.
Okay. Yeah. What a rebrand on humanized instead of what I said bastardized. That's so much softer over there. You're like, yes, it is humanized, James. And I'm like, well, that's not what I said, but
Humanized,
that's funny.
bastardized, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it, all the same.
Oh
Once again,
man.
same thing, same words, or same
Yeah.
meaning, but different words.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we got out of the Mormon church, right? We got out of the relationship. We're not a banker anymore. You start exploring here. When did you get to the point where you started feeling comfortable, confident, or that it was your purpose, passion, or what have you to coach it, not just to live it yourself?
Yeah, that's a really fabulous question. So I was working with people um in different forms of energy work. If you're familiar with the word Reiki, it's basically just using energy for healing. And then in the yoga sense. So I was working in big groups, I was doing workshops, I was working one-on-one with people, really in depth with their physical body, and then also with energy work. And what I found from that is that there was a lot of healing when you had that presence. It's like when you go to a yoga class and you see somebody crying because they're doing hip openers, and all of a sudden it's like they can release whatever is stored in there. So I started seeing all of this correlation, and I mean, it's interesting. And I love to tell this story. Like, I started out doing $25 sessions on my living room floor with people. I just dove in head first. I would get the education and the training, and I would tell people very specifically, I am new at this, I am training, but I need experience. So if you come over to my house and, just give me $25 cash, we can have a whole session on my floor. So that's how I started getting practice. And honestly, I think that in order to really feel confident, you have to have practice working with people. If you're going to be in the industry where you're working with people, especially with trauma, and sexuality, you have to have experience and you just have to learn the nuances of how people work. So I also at the same time started taking trainings at local domestic violence shelters in Chicago, at rape crisis centers, and working alongside with them because I really wanted as much knowledge as I could coming into working around A, sexuality, and then B, around trauma release. So I was just like a sponge for knowledge. And anytime that I could get myself in front of people, anytime people would be able to come over to my house, I was always very transparent of where I was in my journey, because I think that that is something that, can kind of be a little fucked up, for lack of better words, in the industry. It's like you do a weekend coaching course and now it's like, I'm sure I can work with your trauma. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's how it works. You're actually probably going to traumatize people more. So being very upfront and working with the skill level that you have, but that confidence honestly comes from practice and from working with people. I've been working with people now since, I don't know, like 2005, 2007. So
Yeah.
it's a confidence of that.
Yeah, I can definitely understand on the on the working with people and the reps there, right? Whether it be the work that you're doing, whether it be personal training, whether it be a nutritionist side, whether it be something outside of health and wellness, you're really not going to know what the hell you're doing until you put yourself in a position to fail at it, but while also being completely transparent with the people that are trusting you with their journey, that you are not the expert. You are not at the end of this journey. You are not a master of all of this stuff. You are new, right? Like you're
Yeah.
learning and
Mm-hmm.
and you're willing to take them on the journey of what you know so far, and then also release when you know that there's not anything else you can do right now, right?
Absolutely.
Are you in a spot now where you find that you're able to take people much further and deeper, right? With this, I mean, it just almost seems like, and someone may say that this would be scattershot. I don't think that it's scattershot. The understanding that you have of all these different facets that now you're combining together to be one. Do you feel that you're able to just like, man, we're able to dive deep to the depths of the ocean, and you can take someone from the start on?
100%. But you know why? Is because I've also done that journey myself. So I know what the depths of the ocean feel like. And I am not afraid now of the depths of the ocean because I kept putting myself back there over and over again and realized how to swim out of that. Right. And so I always say you can only take people as far as you've gone. So, yes, there probably are certain circumstances in which I would refer people out, but that's very, very rare because with my niche, I have gone to like the depths, felt like you're never getting out,
Mm-hmm.
and figured out a way to pull myself out. So, and I've done that with a lot of different facilitators. We can't do this shit alone, right?
Yeah.
So I 100% can go to the depths with people because I've gone there myself.
Yeah. How many people do you think these days are in a spot where they have a coaching business, or they have at some sort of health ancillary, or in your in your area? How many people do you think legitimately know what the hell they're talking about these days?
I think people are regurgitating a lot of shit they hear from influencers that they like on the internet.
Mm, mm. You see that a lot in your industry too, because it's rampant over here.
Oh yeah. It's like I'm gonna watch some YouTube videos. I'm gonna watch a couple reels from this person. I'm gonna do this like 6-month course and now I know everything. And I'm like, great, but show me your lived experience of it. Right? How did you get from point A to point B? So there's a lot of value in being able to embody what it is that you teach, right? So I think that, yeah, a lot of people, and I think this is where you have to use discernment and ask questions when you're looking to work with a wellness practitioner in general, whether that's a trainer at the gym or somebody who's going to help you like live your best sex life ever, or a trauma practitioner. You need to ask questions like, what is your background? Well, how long have you been doing this? Because not everybody is going to be super transparent. And I mean, I think that you can learn a lot and there's 1,000 different ways to learn different things now. But for me, I look for somebody who has lived experience of whatever it is that I'm working with, and B, they're have a humble enough ego to know that they don't know everything and that they're going to continue to learn. Right. They want to be active and they're like hungry for knowledge still. Like one reason that I love my personal trainer is today I told him a new goal I had and he's like, I'm going to research and I'm going to find different things. He wasn't like, oh, yeah, I already know everything. He was like, cool. Like I'm going to dive in deeper to see what are a few moves that we can add in that's going to help you reach this goal. And that's why I love him because he's like, I can tell him something and he either knows it or he's like, I'm going to research and I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah. The something that I've always seen in yoga, that student and teacher, right? In one at the same time. A lot of disciplines I
Yes.
feel like don't have that, but in yoga, that's something that's, I don't want to say beaten to your head because it's not that aggressive, but I honor the light within you. I honor the student and teacher, like finishing out a practice with a large group in person. That has always been said when I've been in yoga, and I do not frequent yoga every single day. Let me not. I frequent yoga probably a couple times a month, maybe. But that is something that I've definitely loved because words matter, right? Like they have power, whether we want to think that they do or not, right?
Yeah. Oh, words have a lot of power.
So,
Words are highly, highly charged. And like we have reactions to words, whether we want to or not.
yeah. And speaking of words, can we talk about the word shame?
Yeah.
Can we talk about shame in the sense of sexuality? Um,
Yeah.
and really like I want to you're in it, right? You're in the trenches with these with people that are trusting you with their journey. I am not in the trenches with people trusting me with their journey on their sexuality. That is not what I practice or what I'm doing. But I do find in relationships that those things, like romantic relationships or sexual relationships, those things come out, right? Whether you try to suppress them, they're repressed, they're suppressed, or you just don't want someone to see you fully. But can we talk about shame? Do you think it's something that has always been here that we got to work through? Is it something that we self-assign? Is it a chicken? Is it the egg? What are we talking here?
That maybe it's a little bit of both. It's like the little chicklet.
Mm,
It's like the in between.
somewhere in the middle. Fluidity. Here we go.
There we go. It gets to be all the things. Unfortunately, shame is literally all the things. And then you'll have shame that you don't know whether or not it's the chicken or the egg, right? Because that's shameful that you don't know something. So
That's fair.
yeah, shame is a shame is iconic. I hear about shame all the time, all day, every day. So working and I work mostly with women. I do have some male one-on-one clients, but all of my programs are actually really geared towards women. And yeah, shame is something that's talked about every single day. And that's shame from body image to sexuality. There's so much shame that comes up when somebody starts experiencing intimacy and sexuality with somebody. So if you go back to purity culture, right? It's like women's bodies are shamed ever since we were little girls. It's like your body's evil, your body's bad, your body's going to like make people rape you, your body's going to, do all of these things. You shouldn't trust your impulses. If you have sex before you're married, nobody's going to want to marry you because then you're just like used up, washed up, don't have too much sex. But if you don't know what you're doing, then like you haven't had enough sex and nobody's going to want you. It's just like there's no winning being a woman growing up in this society. And so shame is just like, it's like we are dripping with shame. And it really is starting to like brush off these drips of shame sweat on us. And it takes a lot of time and it takes vulnerability because, especially when you get into intimate relationships with somebody, it's like, I've had so many women that they don't want to have sex with the lights on because they don't want their body to be fully seen. They worry about how they sound during sex. They worry about if they're going to come fast enough. They worry about the way that their pussy looks, if it smells okay, if it tastes okay, if it's, you know, tight enough, if it's not too tight, like all these different things. Like women are constantly in their head during sex and that's something that I actually think that most men should know, that this is a huge thing for women, is that women are in their heads so much during sex. And so my work is to help women to get out of their head and into their body during sex. But it's so there's so much shame. There's so much shame when it comes to sexuality.
Yeah. It's it's something that I don't have experience in because I mean, anytime anyone's trying to shame me with sex, I'm like, cool. It's different. Culture is not smacking me in the forehead with it. And I could really care less if someone's got something to say there. But how can we? I guess I really want to take it this direction because I feel like you're doing the work that needs to be done out there for these women that are trusting with their journey. But how can men be part of the solution, not part of the problem?
Yeah, I think that that's a really important question. So, something that's also not talked about is that there is a lot of shame with men. Men experience shame around sexuality as well, right? If they even look at like what porn and society has taught them, they're just supposed to be walking around with a hard cock all the time.
And everything's this
That's
big and
that's
you're
like two
jacked
feet.
up.
That's yeah, two
Yeah.
feet long, and they just can last forever, and they just are ready whenever. And so there is a lot of shame that can come with men too. And so men working around their own sexuality and helping to release that shame is also a big part of it. So the more confident that, a man can show up in and have presence with the woman that he's, so we're just talking like a man woman
Yeah, we're
here
just talking about
right now.
heterosexual example, of course.
Very, yeah. And so, but the more presence and confidence that he can show up, it's going to help a woman feel more at ease. Right. So I always tell like, okay, quickies are awesome. Like a quick fuck is fun and stuff. But like, if you really want a
Can't hate it.
woman to, yeah, we're not going to hate. We're never going to hate on that. But actually, the key to really allowing a woman to open up fully and totally embody her sensuality and embody fucking. It takes time and it takes feeling safe with the man that she's with in order for her to let go. So, this is conversations that need to happen, right? Like, I always tell men to slow down. Like,
No
don't go straight for
jackrabbiting.
the no jackrabbit, don't go straight for the clit and slow the fuck down because those things like will turn a woman off faster
Oh
than
man,
anything.
like a
And
damn
you're gonna get
lawnmower.
you're gonna get the woman faking the orgasms. Like
Oh man.
but you're not gonna get the embodied woman who is so in her pleasure and like just you can just take her to complete ecstasy, which let's be real, a woman in her full embodiment of ecstasy is the most glorious thing to behold in the entire world, right? So slowing down, first of all. So what does that mean? It means that foreplay does not start in the bedroom. It starts way outside of the bedroom. It starts with the flirty texts. Look, there's not a woman alive. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm pretty fucking confident woman, and I still love it when a man tells me I'm beautiful, or, when I'm told that I'm beautiful by somebody. It starts with these little, or like that they love my mind. It's foreplay starts outside of the bedroom. And then it starts at the minute that you see somebody, right? It's like the connection, the hug. Are you touching that person? Are you engaged with them? Are you present with them? Can you tease them? Like, are you emotionally available for, to hold that space? So foreplay starts way before. But then let's say, you get home and it's like, now it's like gonna be sexy time and you're going into the bedroom. Like, can you slow down and really worship her body? Like, how long can you take just like touching? A woman's body is full of so much sensation that most women don't even know and understand the orgasmic potential that they have. So allowing everything to just slow down and really get the woman turned on is so important. It's like when you go, don't just like grab her breasts, like tell her how beautiful they look. Use words of affirmation and then use really light touch at first. And then, you know, acts of service. It's like you're pulling in like all the love languages into a sexual experience, right? So you want it to be sensory, you want to be using your words, you want to really get her juiced up, literally, with all of these things. and tell her how beautiful her pussy is. Tell her how gorgeous her body is and really mean it, but also notice little nuances. Like if she has a really beautiful collarbone, like tell her that. Um, these are all like little things that don't take a lot to do, but go a long way in helping a woman to really warm up to you. And then I think that the last thing I would say is be present with her. Women can tell if you're thinking about something else, if you're trying not to come, if you're like just there to try to get her off, if you feel like it's taking too long, like whatever it is, like women have a high bullshit detector because it's such an intimate space for a woman that has been, it's has been attacked a lot. It's also been it's a place where you're kind of on guard, right? There's a little bit of hypervigilance. So as soon as you detect somebody's energy is off, or you detect that that person is not there, or that they can't hold you fully, it usually turns a woman's sensuality down. They start to get performative. They get in their head. It becomes routine. It's like, all right, let's just get this fucking shit done.
Yeah. I think it's definitely interesting what you said there about just being present, because the only thing that I'd push back on you on there is that it does take a lot, right? You said it doesn't take a lot to do these things. I think it takes a whole bunch. And the reason I think it takes a whole bunch because it takes intentionality and it takes rewiring from what culture is saying. So like the actual acts, 100% agree with you. Like literally we're talking the difference of 5 minutes to 15 minutes. And if you can't give your woman or your partner, if you're not heterosexual, 15 minutes of your time, what the hell are you doing in the relationship in the first place? Right. It doesn't mean that you do it every day, always, right here, right now, right? Like, but if you can't offer presence for 15 minutes with somebody, right? To put them on that pedestal to be in service of them, then I mean, do you really have the capability to be served back? You know? Like
Mm-hmm.
is that even something that should be happening? Right? Because I know culturally for me, growing up, it's been, oh yeah, you want her to go down on you. You don't want to go down on her. You want to get a quick blow job. You want to get this, you want to get that. And a lot of that is not that, any one person is like, oh, this is the way to go. But it's like, well, pops or uncle or older brother or somebody said this along the way. Then it was reinforced by American Pie and social media and these random podcasters, and the objectification the other direction of also men in porn, right? Like, what are women doing? What are straight men and straight women doing in porn? Usually there's a bit of dominance from men over the women, and usually the woman's serving the man, not the other way around. So, like, if
Yeah.
you fill your brain with these kind of things all day, every day, I mean, ubiquitous assimilation, like, what do you think's going to happen, guys? What do you think's going to happen? Like, I think it's interesting. I think it takes a lot, not a lot of time, but a lot of intention. So how do guys get that intention? If you've never been modeled that, where do you find that?
I love this question. And I love this reframe because you're right. It actually isn't, it's not easy. These are different things that, I think I talk about every day. And so I'm like, well, yeah, these are like no brainers. But at the same time, there's not this modeling, right? There's not modeling to slow down. And it's like, have you ever heard as a man? I'm actually genuinely curious. Have you ever heard like, you really want to turn your woman on? So before you go down on her, just spend some time, just like gently kiss, and then look at her pussy and tell her how beautiful it is. Tell her that you love the color. Tell her that you can't wait to taste her. Tell her that you love the contours. Like, is that information that is ever fed to men?
From mainstream media, no.
Mainstream media.
If you get on the
Yeah.
fringe, though, there are practitioners that are on Instagram that talk about honoring the woman in all of her divine femininity. There are a few people that speak of that. And my first legitimate um, experience with like service to partner as a heterosexual man to female partner was from David Dieta, Way of Superior Man. That
Yeah.
book, I just going to be straightforward. That book changed my interaction and my relationship with sex Because for so long, it wasn't about putting another down, but it also wasn't about putting them above. It wasn't about service to partner. It was about, hey, we're going to do this thing. She might fake an orgasm. I know that I can get off if I want to, but it wasn't about service. Read that book, took it to heart, started applying. And it's not that he's the god of sex, but he makes a lot of great, easily digestible points about how to provide space to be present. And then the rest you can explore. Right. He's not like, oh,
Yes.
use these beads or use this toy. No, he's literally like the conceptual understanding of how to serve partner and create the space and put them first for whatever time duration that is. Right. That changed my relationship with sex in a massive way. It was
Mhm.
always transactional before that.
Yeah. 100%. And so this is the essence of what of neo tantra, of the sexuality piece of tantra. Tantra is way more than just sex, which is an entire myth that we could do an entire podcast on sometime. It's like
I'd love
it's
to.
warranted its
I'd
own
love to.
thing. But there is this part of tantra. If people talk about tantra, they think about sex and they think about the slow sex. And so this book that you're describing, I think that every man should read. I think that that is one of the two books. I actually, when I'm getting ready to date somebody, or like I feel like there's some sort of seriousness, I actually give them a different book as well. That's it's called Tantric Sex Secrets for Men, and I cannot. The author is really just slipping my mind right now, but I think we need to give this out. So this book, it's not like 101 ways to get her off. It's resonant with very much what you just were talking about, right? It's kind of an insider into a woman's mind and how to hold that presence and hold that space with her. And it talks a lot about, slowing down, and that the more that you can hold that presence and really allow her to know that you are there and that you can hold all of her and that she's safe to let go. Because that's another thing with women. It's like they're so contracted. It's like once they're like, oh, hey, this person has me. I can be myself. I can make sounds. I can move my body. I can feel this much pleasure. That's literally when things get really yummy and juicy. And I think both of these books are actually hugely great in helping men start to receive a different narrative around what sex is and how to relate to a woman.
Yeah. And did you say 10 tantric sex secrets? Is that what it was?
No, it's just Tantric Sex Secrets for Men. And
Oh,
believe
for men.
I think his name is Carrie something. It's
What every man will want, what every woman will want her man to know about enhancing sexual ecstasy. It's Carrie Riley.
yes, Carrie Riley. That's it. Yep.
Tantric secrets for men.
Yeah, I
Okay.
feel like you should put that in your show notes or whatever. But get that
Absolutely
book.
will.
You're like Amazon, it's going to be delivered in 24 hours.
No, I just pulled up on Amazon to see what you were talking about. And it's, I mean, how crazy is it though? And I don't use that word lightly, that people don't even know of the existence of books like this. People don't even know of the existence of information like this unless you're deep in the world that you're in. Right. And even
Yeah.
there, like, I mean, people are looking at top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 porn stars to model the behavior of what sex should look like in the bedroom. And I am the first person that'll tell you, and I'd love your thoughts on this. You can go rough and rowdy with a consenting adult if you'd like to and do any of that stuff. But I don't know any woman that 24 hours a day, 365 days a year wants to be randomly grabbed by the throat and thrown through a window.
No.
Like
No.
I might be missing something, but in all my experience, which is just a handful of years, I don't think that that's an absolute thing.
No, not 24/7. Not 24/7. We don't, there needs so the thing to understand about a woman is that women are emotional creatures. We're dynamic, right? We're cyclical. This is literally down to our hormones fluctuate so much during the month. And women are very watery, right? So we're very emotional. We've got a lot of hormones. So a woman who is in touch with her embodiment is going to be experiencing a lot of different feelings and emotions throughout the month. So there's going to be times in the month when you're like, bend me over, fuck me now. Usually during ovulation, when it's just like, let's go wild. Like, I'm ready. I want this. But then there's also going to be times when women need to feel that safety, right? It's like they just want to be held. And I mean, I think missionary position gets such a bad rap because it can be such a beautiful place to connect and so intimate and just a really beautiful way to like really be together in intimacy. And sometimes that is the most intimate, like beautiful sex that you can ever have. Right. And it is going to vary from person to person. So I don't know if you know about Jaya's work and the erotic blueprints, just a whole nother conversation, which is
School me, just high
amazing.
level, school me. Who is that? What is that?
Okay. So she has created what's called the erotic blueprints. And I've been studying her work for many, many years, but it became more mainstream last year because she did a Netflix series called Sex, Love, and Goop, where she she was highlighted in this series. So, like I said, her work became a little bit more mainstream, but she talks a lot about, so, we have the love languages, but now we have the erotic languages. So, in her work, she has discovered that most people have some sort of a makeup or a blueprint around their sexuality. So there's sensual, there's energetic, there's kinky, there's sexual, and there's shapeshifter. And so she found that most people have a primary way that they identify with their deepest longings and desires for sex. And then usually, it's like a pie chart. So like you have like the big piece is like this one, and then you've got different ones that you like that are not as strong, right? But they're still out there. Um, so knowing that is a fabulous tool as well to know how your partner likes to relate to sexuality, right? So if you're in a complete disconnect in a partnership around sex, like say you've been together for a little while and like the honeymoon phase is off and you've just like, like you're like, we need to do something. Something good to do is, and I think it's important. I talk about this like on the first and second dates with people because I'm like, I need to know who you are because I've dated enough people now to know, like, I just think this is fascinating information and a cool conversation. Um, you can learn how to relate better to your partner once you know their erotic blueprint, right? So if you know that your partner is sensual blueprint, you're like, all right, so how do I make this more of a sensual experience? Like, maybe I'm going to just grab a fuzzy blanket and throw it down so that when I lay my partner down, they get to experience the softness and the texture. Well, if they're sensual, they probably like music being played. They probably like the ambience. They like, feathers. They like different textures. If somebody's an energetic, that teasing is really important. It's like that anticipation, that buildup of what is to come is really a beautiful practice to get in touch with. If you're kinky, there's psychological kinky where it's like a little bit more psychological, and then there's the physical kinky where you're using toys and different things, and they blend together a little bit, but it is definitely psychological and physical. If you're sexual, that's the ones who are like, bend me over and fuck me. I just want to fuck. And then shapeshifter is basically whatever type of partner you're with, you can kind of shape and mold yourself into whatever that partner is. So if you're with a partner who's really kinky, you can be kinky with them. If you're with a sensual partner, you can flip your switch and be really sensual with them. So that's kind of a high level of what these erotic blueprints are, and it's actually really mind blowing work. And I recommend her work to everybody. Like I said, I was at a breathwork training probably about 6 years ago. And I had just discovered it. And I was like, everybody here, take this quiz right now. And so everybody was finding it out, like what they were. And it's like when you finally do realize like how you relate, it's just a really beautiful way to find out how you relate to sex, what you desire, and to put language to it that you can communicate with a sexual partner.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Do you find that more specifically, or more specifically is not the right word, more frequently that men find themselves as shapeshifters than women do more often?
That's a really good question. And I actually find that more women are shapeshifters.
Wow. What?
Yeah.
Unpack that.
So women have been, and I think that, okay. So I think that some people genuinely are like that shapeshifter category. And I do think that a lot of women are conditioned to just be whatever the man wants it to be. And it's that people pleasing as
Mm-hmm.
well. So that would be like the downside. That so there's like a shadow side, right, of
Got
everyone.
it. Yeah, because
And
that's
so
the
the
power
shadow
dynamic,
side,
right? That's what
yeah,
you're talking about.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like the shadow side of a shapeshifter is sometimes you don't even know your own sexuality because you just go with the flow and you please whatever partner you're with. And so you're not actually owning what you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's shadow sides for every single one of them. So if you ever get shapeshifter, like it's amazing. And also look at the shadow side. Like, are you doing this just for pleasing the person that you're with and because you want them to like you and to think that you're good at sex? And is it more of a performative thing?
Mm. But is service performative, or is service with the necessity for an accompanying emotional checkbox or stamp the problem there?
So service as in elaborates. Like,
Service to partner, to meet them where they're at, to honor their femininity, or to serve them sexually in the way that they like to receive, with no necessity for the emotional checkbox or circle, or you got it, you did great, like no participation or necessary and ultimate outcome, like is service itself to partner. Because I find myself in some situations, and have in the past and more recently, where I just want to serve. I want to put my partner in a place where she is feeling honored, feeling seen, feeling appreciated, feeling heard, feeling appreciated, and is able and allowed and has a space to go where her body wants to take her. And if that's to orgasm today in any type, cool. If that's not, and that's just presence here, and us doing what we're doing, then that's cool too. I don't I think that some of it from my childhood maybe have come from like, hey, I want to be a people pleaser because I want everyone to like me and I want to just serve. And because I get a badge, I get my, I get my stripes on my shirt when I'm doing this much service. But I think that when I broke out from under the veil of my father, and I don't know that you necessarily know this, but I lost my dad when I was 16, and I was not my own man until he was gone. Like I did not start my journey into my own manhood until he was gone, because everyone in our town knew him. Similarly, the reason that I was doing things for other people shifted, not immediately, but over time, where I'm like, hold on, I don't need you to co-sign that I'm a good person. I don't need you to co-sign that, you know, I'm showing up and I'm doing my civic duty, or I'm helping people in need, because frankly, I don't give a fuck what you have to say about me. Because if I wouldn't trust you to take a bullet for me, why do I care what you're saying? So all of that to say that when you're saying what you're saying about service, it has me question, like, is service to partner, can it just be selfless? Can it be? Or is it for
100%.
attention? You know?
I 100% think it can be. And so, where I would challenge that is that if you knew that the woman loved a more sensual experience, that's going to change the way that you please her and try to evoke sensation and pleasure from her, right? If you knew that she, if you have that conversation and that's where I think that a lot of this gets stuck, is that people aren't having these conversations. And I think that for a lot of people it's probably weird to have these conversations soon, but I think the sooner that you can start talking about sex, especially if you're going to have sex with a person, the better, right?
Mm-hmm.
And talking after sex of like, what really worked for you? What did you really enjoy about that? But if you have this knowledge of how somebody enjoys and they're able to communicate this with you, it's going to change the way that you show up and try to, be intimate with this person. So, yes, service to serve. I think it's fucking beautiful. I think that that's the most amazing mindset to have, right? For a woman and a man. Like women, I think that women should have the same desire, right? That's the ultimate goal, is that you both have the desire to evoke pleasure for each other and just create this like whole container of sensations of pleasure. And the more information that you have about your partner, about what they really like and what turns them on, is going to help you to evoke that even deeper. But where I also see that people get caught up is they don't actually know what the fuck turns them on. They
Turns
just
themselves on or turns their partner on or
turns
neither?
themselves on.
Oh, okay.
Both. Turns himself on.
Mm-hmm.
So I see this a lot with women, right? It's like we think that women are just supposed to have these mind-blowing orgasms as soon as they're penetrated. And guess what? Literally, only 30% of women can orgasm from penetration. That's it. Like, that is a very solid fact. Women need more stimulation. They need something else besides just penetrative sex. Not every woman, but a lot of women need something more. And so but women are told, well, you're just supposed to orgasm as soon as you're penetrated, right? Like should only be a couple minutes. Like you should just be able to orgasm, and something's wrong with you if you don't. So it's like most people don't know what exactly turns them on. So that is part of the work that I do, is helping women discover their turn on, right? It's like, where do you like to be touched? Well, have you ever spent time exploring your own body to understand how you like to be touched? It's like, how do you know, how like learn how to give yourself a G-spot orgasm. So then you can kind of, guide somebody, what they feel like. Like learn what your vulva feels like, all the different parts, like learn what stimulates you. So then you can show up in a sexual intimate container and you already know what turns you on. You can, guide, you can give feedback, you can have this like dance of intimacy with a partner because you know already what it is that what you like. And then you also just get to explore with somebody, because it's going to feel different with yourself and with a partner. But I feel like that is one of the biggest things, is women don't even understand their own power of turn on.
Yeah, I think that that's something that sometimes comes back to that purity culture that we were talking about. But then I mean, how many times has your partner given you space to communicate verbally what you want, and then done their best, their level-headed best, not, oh, I just did what you asked me to do and it didn't work, so fuck you. But legitimately done their best to then go also on the other side. Like, yes, it's a woman's responsibility to figure out on self-play, like what does she like, right? But also, how many partners, and let's take the heterosexual example again here, because that's the only experience I have. So how many times are the partners, right, the men, also doing their part outside of the bedroom when they're not with partner to figure out what any of that is, understand the anatomy of a vagina, understand the anatomy of their own body? Like how much have you done? Like, you've studied a lot on college sports, you studied a lot on your favorite fantasy football players, and you know all the stats there, but you don't know the difference between the cervix and the clitoris. So can you
Or a
really even
vagina or a vulva? Most men don't
be?
have a clue what the difference between a vagina and a vulva is,
Most people
right?
also think, yeah, and most people also think that that there's one way to do it, and it's the way that's been modeled for them, or the way that it's about them. It's the Kim K sex tape. It's like, I mean, I know we're beating a dead horse here now, but I think that people don't realize how much everything that they're seeing, that they're watching, that they're communicating on Twitter, scrolling, and there is nothing wrong. In fact, we should honor a woman's body in all of its capabilities, naked, clothed, in an Eskimo suit, what have you. I don't think that there's anything shameful about you displaying your body how you'd like to and expressing yourself how you'd like to at all. But men, if you're not doing the work to understand the intention behind those people doing that, and then also understand where your head is going immediately when you see that, how can you even honor your partner? How?
100%.
How?
100%.
Like, that's almost not possible. If you're afraid of the wand coming out or a bullet coming out or some sort of sucking vibrator also coming out, like a 2-in-1 there, because you feel insecure about what you're able to do on your own, guess what? Your dick doesn't have to be the dick that gets someone to the moon if they want something different or they want something combined. I think it's ridiculous that so many men are afraid, well, like, if you use sex toys, I must be underperforming. Maybe. Or maybe your partner doesn't want just that.
And maybe a woman wants a vibrator on her clit while you're fucking her.
And what's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that? You're like more pleasure.
Yeah.
Right?
At the end of the
But
day,
this
like,
is a conversation that like needs to happen because there are a lot of men, right? Like I obviously am a big proponent of women's sex toys. I mean, I talk about and I teach processes with different wands, right?
mhm.
And so I teach women to feel more sensation in their vagina, but there are a lot of men that get intimidated by that. They're like, oh my God, but I'm not like uh you know jade wand, like I'm not going to be able to perform as well. Well, guess what? Like they're different. It's completely different. And why can't there be like 50 shades of sex that somebody can enjoy, right? So it's a completely different experience when a woman is pleasuring herself versus with partner. And I mean, there have been funny stories that people have told me and friends have told me. It's like, well, they're they'll bring out a vibrator or they'll start talking about like a wand and the guy's like, I just don't think that this is going to work out for me. And I'm like, that poor man doesn't realize that they're throwing away an empowered woman in her sensuality because they're intimidated by a fucking piece of like gemstone.
Or
And it's
silicone or something with a
with
battery pack
silicone.
in it. Like, calm down, guys. Your responsibility to
Yes.
figure it the fuck out, right?
Yeah.
It's not all about you. I think that comes back probably to the entitlement, though, that a woman's there to please a man, right? So, like, if you're
Mm-hmm.
to get this, if you're to get beads, if you're to get a butt plug, if you're to get something else that is outside the realm of what a random straight man is comfortable with today, not forever, but today, that then that man should run away because he's not good enough. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not fighting the toy for the woman, my guy.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like,
But this comes back to the S word of shame.
yeah,
They're feeling shame because they feel like they can't perform, with their hard 2 foot long cock that goes forever that you see in porn.
yeah,
So it's unwinding that shame as well and realizing that sex is a buffet, right? I always tell people like your sex doesn't get boring if you stay curious. There's literally thousands and thousands of ways that you can enjoy sex and orgasms and intimacy and pleasure with the body. If you stay curious and you're open, there's so much out there. There's so much out there. And toys are just a little tiny part of it, right? I mean, it's literally just like one serving of the buffet.
yeah. But it's I think for some people's worlds and a lot of men, it's like that is the antithesis of what I should be doing, or that is like the opposite of what's going to get my partner and I closer together, right? There's fear there,
Yes.
but let's unpack this then. I mean, as a coach, as a worker in this space, what does it look like? Like 3 recommendations for a man to own the sexuality and to explore himself. Obviously, we have those 2 books, and I cannot co-sign David Dietta's book more. Literally, I have not read the other one, so I'm sure I might co-sign it after I read through it. But
I will co-sign that one. So you have 2 people here co-signing these books. I literally hand this book to some guys when I start dating them. I'm like, you can date me when you've read this.
and you understand it and can apply it.
Absolutely. I'm like, this is what you're getting yourself into. This is what happens when you date a sex coach.
Right. So outside of those 2 books, like, what does it look like for a man to own that? Because yeah, men don't talk with other men about this unless it's about, oh yeah, in the locker room talk, or even I would say mid 20s, early 30s, if you're not a party animal, like I don't sit around with any of my guy friends, and most of them are in relationships. We don't talk about this stuff at all. And it's not because
Yeah.
we're running around like, sex is bad. Everyone, all of us know that everyone's having it, right? Now, the quality of that, I have no idea. There's no way for me to check that because we don't speak about it, right?
Mhm.
So, where does a man go to explore? Those two books, and then what else?
So I think that there actually is a lot of good information out there. Like you said, it's like, okay, first step, why don't you learn a woman's anatomy? I bet if I lined up 50 men, a handful of them would be able to tell you a woman's actual anatomy, right? It's like, let's start there. Let's start with the basics. Literally pull up a diagram. So you know what the word labia means. You know what a vulva is. You
Yeah,
know that vagina, if you call it a vagina, you're only referring to the inner part of a woman. The outer part is the vulva. It's like learn what the clitoris is, learn what the cervix is, learn what the G spot is, like learn more about the anus, like learn more about the perineum, like all of these different
there it
anatomy
is. Words that
parts.
people don't even understand. You're throwing words that
Exactly.
probably 95% of people could not, like, gun to head, right? And had to point them out on an anatomy chart, labeled one, two,
Would
three,
have
four, five, six,
no
seven, eight, nine,
idea.
10. Gone.
Done. It's gone. They're gone. And like these are important parts if you're going to be engaging in sex with a woman, right? These are parts of her body. And like learn the difference between her boobs and her nipples.
There's
And I know that
a
sounds like what? I know there's a
yeah.
fucking difference, but like have you really spent time engaging and like engaging with her breasts and all of the like delicious parts? Like, do you know if she's just really sensitive on the outer side and you can give her an entire orgasm just by stroking one part of her breasts? Have you slowed down enough to even like notice the different parts? Or are you just like boobs?
We squeeze and we put our mouth on them. That's it.
Exactly. But like once again, like going straight for the boobs is literally like going straight for the clit. Like slow down, right? Warm up to them.
Yeah.
So I would start honestly with basic anatomy. Like, did you know that you can give a woman an orgasm in three different spots within her vagina? With her G spot, her A spot, and her cervix? Like, do you even like you don't know that if you don't even know what those places are, right? So learning basic anatomy of a woman's body. And then the second thing is like having communication with the partners that you're with. And I know that that can be really
Ooh, you
scary.
said plural. Uh-oh. Careful.
Partners. Well,
Plural.
like
Uh-oh.
some
Watch
people
out,
say
Stephanie. Watch
they're
out.
dating multiple people, like
Yeah.
having different parts. I don't know,
I'm just
whatever. I
poking
don't
at you.
really. I know you are. I know you are. God forbid we have more than one sexual partner.
Well, I wouldn't want to do that, you know. You have sex, you get pregnant, and you die.
Exactly. And you go to hell and you
Well,
burn.
of course, for eternity, because what else would be happening other than that?
Exactly. You go to the underworld and fuck Hades, but that's a whole nother story too.
All right. There we go. A nice escalation.
I see you and I will up the ante.
Well, look, we're here for that. The thing the thing that I think here that I don't I mean we beat the horse dead is that, I mean, you've got to explore yourself, right? You got to explore
Mhm.
what you're into, what you're not into. You also gotta you don't have to do any of this actually, but if you want to have a better experience with all of it, you might have to put yourself in a place where you work through trauma too. That's something that we haven't really
Yeah.
pinged on so far, but can you unpack what the sexual trauma work? I know that it literally it's so deep that we could go for hours on it, but can you unpack some of that? Because there might be some repressed or suppressed, even on the male side, that people are not
Oh
dealing
yeah.
with.
100%. So, we always hear about women who have experienced sexual trauma, but actually, the actual statistics, and this is only what's reported, so it's way more, is one in three women and one in six men. That's a lot of men that have experienced sexual trauma. A lot of men. And not only trauma, physical trauma, but also that shame as well, right? So like I've talked to a lot of men who have left different religions and they're so shamed around masturbation that they freeze even during sex, or they're told that you shouldn't have sex with women in certain ways, or they're fed so many different things, or they have their own physical sexual trauma as well. And it's not talked about. There's very few men that really come out and talk about this because there is stigma and there's a lot of shame around a man experiencing sexual trauma, which is really unfortunate. So, two men that I know that have really come out and very publicly spoke is I know Lewis House. I believe he talked very publicly about his, and I want to say Tim Ferriss even came out recently with a really
Big
cool
dudes.
podcast around sexual trauma. And I don't think that there's anything that's more important than listening to men talking about this, and normalizing that this is something that has happened, and men need and deserve help as well, because men get so repressed from their sexuality as well, because once again, you've got the trauma aspect, but they're also just spoon fed that this is the way it's supposed to look and be and feel. And there's so much shame around being a young teen boy, and like all of a sudden it's like, oh my god, my dick is hard and I'm in the middle of class and I don't know what to do, or I woke up and I'm just wet because I just had a wet dream and I don't know what to do, and I want to masturbate, but like what if I get caught? And like there's so much to unpack for men to be able to really, once again, it's like own their primal sexual nature that is confident and coming from a very holistic place.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of shame, and there's a lot of stack the shame then on top of where you're at and the trauma there. I mean, growing up, it was like I remember, and my mom's gonna hate that I'm saying this. Don't really care, but my dad before he passed was of the mind that like, and this is gonna sound so ludicrous, that really the only way that you could masturbate is if it was pleasing the Lord, right? He was like, so if the marker, like if you cannot pass the does this please the Lord, right? Does this honor the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit here? If that's not the case, then you shouldn't be doing it because it's a sin. And I was like, hold on. I'm like 11 at this point. Like, you mean to tell me that when I clear the history on the browser from me looking at Pornhub when y'all are not home and pretend like I didn't do that, that's a sin? Right? Not only from there, then also push further down to when I'm in my bedroom as a young child, and like, look, I've been fed that if I have sex, I'm going to be in a spot where I'm going to I'm going to get an STD, and then next thing you know, like no one's going to love me down in the future, and I'm not going to be able to have kids because you don't want to pass that on to your kids. And then so then what do? I turn on music, turn on the radio, close the door, and do it in my room. But know 100% when I was a kid that if mom ever found the Kleenexes or found any of that stuff and I didn't flush it in time, or like I fell asleep, like it felt so good, I fell asleep and then I left it in the sheets and forgot about it when she was washing them, I was traumatized. I was legitimately like, I can't have mom know that this is happening, because it doesn't. And it sounds so silly now from the vantage point of where I'm at and how sexual I believe that I am and how open I believe that I am about what I'm not about, what I'm into, what I'm not into. I mean, not with the world. I'm not necessarily just like hopping on live on Instagram and be like, okay, for anyone that wants to date me in the future, here's the deal. But I am pretty open and honest with partners about that. So, it is wild to me to wonder what that looks like for someone that never got out of it. And fortunately for me, dad died and I was able to step into being my own man and choose what that is. I love that I had him for that many years, but I also don't think that I necessarily would be in the same position. Well, actually, I know for certain I wouldn't be in the same position. But on top of that, on the sexual side, Would I have treated women the way that I have up to this point? Would I have honored them for who they were if I didn't have to go through that growing up period when I was before 17? Because if I hadn't have done that now, how many people in their 20s, 30s, 40s that are just now starting that journey? I cannot imagine going through not only the shame, but the trauma of all of that 30 years later.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And all of these things that you're talking about are actually very real experiences that so many men have. But like you said, it's not talked about because there's even shame in like, oh my God, my mom's going to hear this, or, different. It's like that fear is still there. Like people are going to know that I'm having sex or, whatever it is. And also men get shamed during sex too, right? So I work with a lot of women who some jackass partner has told her that she doesn't look right or like something is wrong or like she wasn't good or that her pussy smelled or whatever it is, but men are told things as well during sex. And those things stick with men and men can get into their heads just as much as women, right? Because, and it becomes that performance. It's like, oh, I need to look this certain way. And then you don't have that presence because it's all about performance. So the ball swings both ways with women and with men here. And unpacking that shame and that trauma that you get from family and from religion and from society and from porn and from, social media, even now, it's really important to do so that you can find out who you are as a sexual being and show up as that in relation.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very interesting. And I have like this much of an understanding, right, of what that looks like because we're just talking about anecdotally. And then with friends that have been open enough to share, which, men, that's few and far between, right?
Very few and far between
But
because they all just assume it's like everybody's just getting fucked and it's perfect.
yeah, and everyone wants to be the head honcho and not looked at by a group for whatever reason. And I think that this is interesting. Have you ever read the book Never Sleep Alone?
I've not heard of it.
Okay. It's very interesting the way that she breaks down. She breaks down the homoerotic nature of men wanting approval from other men when these men that are claiming that they don't want that are heterosexual and are going down that direction, dating women. But I find it very interesting that men are not even willing to admit to other men, right, that are dealing with the same thing. What's happened with them? They're not willing to admit that, like, oh, well, I'm not a foot and a half long walking around flaccid, right? I'm not and not to say that you need to have that conversation with everyone by any stretch of the imagination. That's not
Yeah.
necessarily just, oh, it's a Tuesday, let's have coffee and talk about dick size. But where does a man, well, I mean, maybe in your day to day, in your coaching journey, that kind of thing comes up a little bit more than where I'm at. But where does a man go for this type of thing to be able to unpack the insecurities, to be able to unpack where they're at, or a woman that said you're too small, you're not ripped enough, you don't look like Zac Efron, you don't look like The Rock, who by the way both are on steroids. You don't last 15 minutes like Johnny Sins does. You don't hit it from the back the way that, oh goodness, I don't really know any other male porn stars, but at the end of the day, like I don't know any other name to drop, right? Like I have no idea, but the comparative nature of putting let's call a regular person, someone that's just in their everyday walk, to someone that is literally paid thousands of dollars to be performative on camera for a specific reason. Like in my mind, we can't compare those two experiences. One is for commerce, right? And pulling people in, and the other with intentionality should be potentially for pleasure, for honoring one another, for, I mean, there's a gamut of things within the pocket that could be probably solid, and I'm sure you could speak to more, but where the hell does a man go for that kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. So starting off with some of these books, I think is a really good place to start because then you can start to learn the language So these two books that you and I have recommended, I think are just really honestly like a fabulous place to start. The second thing would be to find people on social media who are talking about this. Like that is something that you have control over, right? Of who you follow. Are you following like these guys who are like, walking around like I am the 2 foot long cock all the time. Like, are you watching this porn and stuff? Or are you following men that are talking about conscious sexuality or tantric sex or just giving, like, there's so many different people. Like, if you even just type in like conscious sexuality or men's sexuality, there's a lot of different people that are talking about it in a very holistic way. And so, even just having this, like, we're all on our fucking phones all day long anyway, right? And so, having these things go through your mind is going to start to help with this rewiring of what sex actually is and what that word even means and what men's sexuality is. And then I would also recommend finding women who are talking about sex and sexuality online as well, which once again, there's a plethora, including myself, that are talking about these different things. So it's like find people who are talking about sex in a holistic way and immerse yourself into the content, right? Get on, listen to the podcast, listen to what type of content they're putting out. And from there, it's like once you start to build these muscles of like, oh, sex can mean so many different things and there's so much more out there. If there's things that you need to work through, there's coaches and there's therapists out there, and it's okay to ask for help. Like, it's okay. And these are things that you're not taught when you're little. And you're also taught the opposite of it. First of all, don't ask for help at all because that makes you weak. And, you shouldn't have any mental illness. You shouldn't have anything wrong with you. You just don't ask for help. But then it's like asking for help around sex, something that you're just supposed to naturally be fucking brilliant at. There's another layer. And so I'm here to normalize that it's okay to ask for help and it's okay to sign up for different courses around sexuality and immerse yourself in these conversations because the more that you can have this just be part of your language, that shame melts away. And men need spaces where they can talk about these different things. And there are spaces and there are people out there who very specifically work with this who can help unpack all of the trauma and all of the shame and just being in places where it's normalized, right? Like, I don't know. Society says if you have premature ejaculation or, erectile dysfunction, here's a fucking pill and just be done with it. And like, that'll work fine for a while, but let's get to the root of it so you can enjoy your body and you can enjoy your partner and you can bring that level of confidence and pleasure and presence to a relationship or
Yeah.
partnership or sex or whatever it is, however you feel like relating.
Sexcapade, whatever you want to call it,
Sexcapade.
however it is,
Yes.
whatever the construction
Yes.
is, one on
Yes.
one, 2 on 1, 5 on 1, whatever, you
Whatever.
know,
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
right? Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. I mean, I'm glad that you brought up the ED and the PE and then also the size thing. It's something that I think doesn't get a lot of airtime either. That there are these unspoken like, damn, well, if you're not hung like that and you don't have stamina like that, then who no woman's and there are assumptions made, right? But no woman's gonna want you because that's what they want too.
Yeah.
I've met plenty of women, friends and otherwise, that's not what's come out of their mouth. One wants to
No.
be seen, appreciated, heard, honored. It doesn't. At the end of the day, everyone's got preferences for sure, but I don't think that a precursor or prerequisite for an encounter is that you're a foot and a half long. Gentlemen,
Yeah. And
calm
actually,
down.
that would hurt most women. Most women don't want that. That's going to fucking hit the back of our, like, it's not comfortable.
Yeah, it's gonna bend on itself inside. No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Too big.
Like take anal out of the question because that's not happening with a 2 foot dick. I guess
There
there are
it
some people
is.
that is their thing. That's great. Not knocking.
Well, and I loved it. I think that I what I really like about your message is more so that it's not, hey, you must fit this box or you must do this thing or you must do this thing. Here's what's worked for me, and here's what I would like to get you to the empowerment of and the way that you want to go about that, the self-love, the practice with partner, the conversations, like, I mean, I've watched probably 40 of your individual stories answering questions. And through all of it, I I should show you some gratitude here because you're like, hey, this is what I would do, and this is what I would look for, but you've got to figure out for you. Here's the things that would be good to understand about this thing, but I'm not going to tell you have to do this or have to do this or have to stay away from this. Like I mean, and I think it's a conversation for another day because we're about to wrap here, but diving into poly, to open, to relational constructs, and then also there's a handful of things over there that I think a lot of people try to make black and white, right? It's like, hey, you're monogamous or you're a slut, male or female, man or a
Yeah.
woman, or any other categorical breakdown there. You're either monogamous and you're married and you're unified, you're together, or you're on the other side and you're just a whore. And I don't believe that. That's ones and zeros. That's black and white, right? But what I really appreciate about the way that you communicate is that on these very touchy subjects, you go the opposite direction. Like, this is where I'm at. That doesn't float my boat, but if it does yours, okay, I don't see anything wrong with it. And I think
Yeah.
that's awesome. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you.
And I think it's what's drawn me into following you longer. I mean, and I have no idea how I found you on Instagram, probably on the explore page. But then, I mean, I don't stay on people's pages that long, to be fair, because there's a lot of regurgitation, like you're saying. Seems different. So I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I really um look, being a human is such a dynamic experience. And then you add in sexuality and the fluidity and relationships and more people. And there's so much out there that's so complex. And so having a lot of grace for just the human experience and then the wide, vast experiences that people can have is something that's really important to me. And I think that normalizing and talking about all of these different things also helps to destigmatize that shame that once again I was talking about and start to like loosen the grip that it has over not just us individually, but as a society. It's like, let's open our minds that these things might be okay. They might not be for you, but they might be okay for somebody else. And it's all okay. And like everybody's just going to be okay. And we're all going to go to the grocery store and just not even realize who's fucking who and like what's happening and who's what. It's like we can all just coexist in this place where we don't have to feel shame and all of these stigmas around what it is that we prefer and how we orient and our relationship orientation. And there's just a lot of ways to be a really good human and also enjoy sex at the same time.
There it is. We will end on that note. Anything that one you want to leave everybody with, and then number two, can you please just word vomit everywhere that somebody can find you, in case they're not on Instagram, in case they're not on Spotify, in case they're not on YouTube? Like, where can they find you, and how can they get in touch if they want to talk more?
Yeah. So I just want to normalize your experience. Like if you're out here listening to this, there's other people that feel the same way that you do. And like I say this with all sincerity, your experience is probably not that unique. And there's a lot of people out there that feel the same way as you. And so opening yourself up to finding more information, it's going to help normalize whatever it is that you're experiencing. And then you can either embrace it or work on healing it or whatever it is that you need to do, but just normalizing whatever somebody's experience is out there. And you can find me basically everywhere at Stephanie Ray Coaching. That's my website. That's my Instagram. Those are like the two main places. I am on Facebook a lot. But yeah, Stephanie Ray Coaching is pretty much where you can find me across the board. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, I greatly appreciate you being here. I believe that we will have to do it again because there's so many things that we did not dive into with time constraints. So I am very much looking forward to that in the future. And again, thank you for being open and willing to come on here on a platform that, we don't usually talk about sex here, but I love it and I had a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I appreciate you.